So you mentioned like I'm applying to hundreds of jobs and I'm not seeing anything in return. And my first question to that is like, have you changed something about what you're doing?
Yeah.
Because it's not working. The narrative is not being told in a way that's being looked at by these organizations that you're applying to, and you need to change that.
Hi, everybody. My name is Channelle McNutt. Excited to be here for episode 3 of The Power of the Aztec Network. This is a podcast that's all about providing practical tools, tips, and information to help you navigate today's evolving job market. And I'm super excited to be here with
Ryan Smith, class of 2015. I'm excited to be here. Thank you. I've spent a decade in recruiting and excited to share a little bit about it.
Hi, Ryan.
Hello, Channelle.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
To the Power of the Aztec Network. I am so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And I am really excited for our conversation today.
It's going to be a good one.
It's going to be a great one. Okay.
I agree.
So curious, I've been asking everybody, when's the last time you've been to campus and how does it feel to kind of be semi-back?
This campus changes like daily, I think.
Yep.
I was back maybe 6 months ago to show a little cousin around as he was choosing colleges to apply to.
Yeah.
And so we did a little walking tour.
Okay.
But I was not an ambassador, so it was my version of the walking tour. Included Chajillos.
Nice.
Things like normal SDSU things.
Yeah, iconic places.
100%.
Okay. Did little cousin apply?
No.
Oh, dang. Okay.
I know.
Why did you kind of decide to go to San Diego State? Tell me about that journey.
Well, I'm born and raised in San Diego.
Okay.
So and my whole family is here, and I think I didn't want to leave home. Okay. I think growing up here, there's 2 different ways you can go. You can be adventurous and break free and leave San Diego, or you stay because it's the best city ever.
Yep.
My dad's an Aztec.
Oh, that's
so
fun.
I'm a legacy. He was a marching Aztec.
Whoa.
I know.
Oh, right.
So I grew up, like SDSU was very ingrained in the family.
Oh my gosh. What instrument did Dad play?
Drums.
Okay.
Yeah. He stayed an extra year to go to Japan with the marching Aztecs.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's one of his like fondest memories.
And you're musically talented as well, right?
I play some music.
Okay.
Yes. Talent is in the eye of the beholder.
Oh, stop it. I've seen some of your stuff. It's so good.
Back at SDSU, it was definitely a big part of my college career. Was
really?
Music. Yes. I played music all around. We got to do the Greenfest show. Do they still do Greenfest?
I think so. Wait, what? Tell me the story, because I used to do Greenfest. What do you mean? What did you do?
We, my buddy Brandon and I back in the day, won a contest that was done on one of the very first Greenfest shows where we got to open for Macklemore.
Oh my gosh. Okay. That was my Greenfest.
Yes.
Oh that was like the first Greenfest. Okay.
Yes. We got, and it was, Dev.
Yes.
Bass Down Low.
Yes.
I don't know if anyone knows that song anymore, but that was like...
Go to the thrift shop, baby. Okay.
Yeah, and that was right when Thrift Shop was getting huge.
Huge.
That was a big show.
I wore like a fur coat. I committed.
That was fun. That was probably like, that was like, how big is that amphitheater? 5,000, 10,000?
It's huge. It's huge.
I mean, I played in front of that many people. That was wild.
Oh, and so do you play the drums too?
No, guitar.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's a cool fun fact.
It is a fun fact.
Okay. All right. So music, big part of your life. Dad is an Aztec.
Yes.
You're an Aztec. What did you major in? Why?
I majored in many things along the way. Ended on interdisciplinary studies.
Okay.
Which is a conglomerate of all of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was a late bloomer in deciding what I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
And SDSU lets you have that experience, and you take classes from a couple different colleges and petition to make it your own.
So what was your combo?
Mine was business, psychology, and comm.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting thing. And now I have a master's in organizational leadership, so kind of all turned into IO. Yeah. Industrial organizational psych.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Now, did you know then when you were kind of putting these classes together, putting this curriculum together, that you would have a career in business, HR? No. Okay.
I had no idea what I was going to do.
Okay.
I worked for Student Life and Leadership while I was on campus.
Yep.
And there was a student life advisor in the office. I'm not sure if she's still here or not, but who was a recruiter in a previous life of hers before she went into student affairs. And that's when I first learned about recruiting. And I was very involved on campus, and I was the director of recruitment for IFC and for my own individual fraternity. And I was like, okay, so this is a career. I'm already doing it. Why not explore that?
Okay, so psychology, business, communication.
Yes.
And then you said later got your master's in organizational leadership. Okay. Super involved on campus.
Yeah.
When you think about your time at San Diego State, what's like a key takeaway value that you feel like you learned during your time at San Diego State?
The leadership, I think, is the big, I think that when I was going to school for my undergrad, the leadership programs were really, you were a year above me, I think, but they were really starting to be created during our time. And I think that leadership piece to it that we all got to be involved with from the beginning was major in setting us ahead in our careers. Yep. Because then you get to the workforce, and I know everybody's color. I'm an orange. Do you remember what you were?
I'm an orange.
Yeah, there we are.
Colors, exactly.
True colors.
Yeah.
And the animal thing and all that. I think it really does, and it sets you into a it puts you in a box that you're able to really start assessing not only the work you're doing, but the people you're working with, and figuring out how to work with them.
Yeah, it's such a great point. I feel like between student life and leadership, associated students, we're getting exposed to all these opportunities. And in the moment, to your point, I had no idea that kind of talking about true colors and your animals, which is really your conflict styles, were really tools to assess human capability, organizational effectiveness.
And working with diverse people.
Boom.
Because you're going to be sitting in an office or a Zoom room or whatever it is nowadays with people from different countries, different states, different walks of life, and you have to work with them. You get to work with them.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so talk to me a little bit from graduation. You said, you had some fundamental experiences that exposed you to recruiting. Tell me about the leap. What was your first job out of college? And then how did you kind of end up to the role and the work that you do today?
So my first job right out of college was working for a staffing agency as a junior recruiter. I was very fortunate enough to know somebody that had that role previously and had left to go to a major player in Bay Area and recommended me for the job as I was graduating, and was able to kind of land that and really get my feet wet in recruiting. Now, staffing agency recruiting, you're on the phones all day, you're making those cold calls. That was also 10 years ago. So I think it might be a little bit different now, but I was on the phones in student life and leadership for everyone, trying to get people, doing that. So I got my foundation there. So I was fortunate enough to be able to really grind. You have to grind when you get into recruiting. You gotta, it's cold calls. It's learning how to connect with human beings and figure out what they want, and then connect them with those jobs that you have available.
Okay.
So it was definitely an opportunity to learn. I would say it was that first job.
Okay.
And then I was laid off.
Okay.
6 months in.
6 months in, laid off.
Yeah.
First job.
Yeah. Eye-opening. Okay. But once you do it once, you can get through it.
Okay.
It forces you to reevaluate and then probably go for roles you weren't going to apply to at the beginning because you want to stick around. Yeah. And prove yourself. But I was forced to go elsewhere. I ended up in nursing, nurse staff, staffing nurses. Okay. In hospitals, travel nursing, which is a brutal business.
Another grind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so it's great kind of context, kind of you going through kind of the career journey of becoming a recruiter, and just thinking about our new grads and folks that are looking for employment. I'd love for you to kind of break down the differences and maybe ways folks can leverage kind of building rapport with a staffing agency, similar or different than they would kind of a company. Because are they similar or different? I'm just curious if you could break that down a bit from a candidate perspective.
I think if you are looking for your first role, maybe sometimes, depending on who you ask, the staffing agencies might be something that is not as popular, I would say, maybe because it's contract work or anything like that. But it is a way to get in the door and prove yourself, I would say. Every recruiter role that I'm aware of starts off as contract until they know that you can do it. And then they'll offer you a full-time job. And I think it's a mindset shift of using the opportunity of a contract with a staffing agency to then meet this organization and the human beings that work there to get your foot in the door. When traditionally maybe people are a little more turned off from temporary work because it can be scary. It can be scary because it could end at any minute, but it's a risk. You got to take the risk.
No, I think it's such a great point because I think your point, there's sometimes some bias associated with contract work. And I love your the way you're kind of framing it. It's like, hey, this is an opportunity to get exposure real time. And I'm curious, from your stance as a recruiter, are you seeing more companies kind of create more contract opportunities?
I think that in today's corporate landscape, with AI being as involved in the industries as they are and not knowing what next quarter is even going to look like from a workforce standpoint, I do think that maybe contract work is being leveraged more. But at the same time, it depends on the industry. I think I'm really big about like not seeing the market from a global perspective or from a even just from like a domestic like country perspective. Like each industry has its own market, and one market could be booming and one market could not be booming. And it really depends on the work that you're getting into.
So what all have you recruited for? Because I mean, you're throwing out, you were at the staffing, nursing. I know you're in engineering now. What?
The best thing about being a recruiter is that the skill sets that are required to be a recruiter can be used in many industries, but you have to be quick to learn those industries. I did travel nursing. It's been travel nursing. I did higher education for a while, but we call that GNA, like general administrative roles. So I was in higher education for a while, and then moved into technology and software engineering. And that's kind of been the bread and butter for the last 5 years. It's been software engineering.
And that's where you're at right now?
Yes.
How do you learn these industries? Like tell me, like, what are you doing in the first 30 days to build deep knowledge? And I'll say working and evolving knowledge. Of pretty technical spaces, nursing, software engineering. What has been helpful for you in kind of being able to learn a space?
I would say humility is the biggest thing, is being able to admit that you don't know it. And leaning on, I'm the expert in recruiting. I am not the expert in nursing. And leaning on the managers or the hiring managers or those people at those organizations that are the experts in their field to teach me what they need. And if you don't know something, ask. Don't pretend. That's the biggest thing. That's where you get in trouble. So I think it's you have to be inquisitive. You have to be curious. You have to know what questions to ask, and you have to know how to ask follow-up questions because they're going to assume you know, and if you don't, you just have to ask. A lot of YouTube.
A lot of YouTube.
I think so sometimes. Well, I use YouTube. I think people probably use ChatGPT nowadays.
So many different ways. So now we're getting into kind of the daily tasks work that you do. So you said hiring manager, understanding the role, understanding the market. And you are, as a recruiter today, looking at thousands of resumes. Sometimes 500 in the first day of getting posted. 500.
That's a good day.
That's a good day.
I mean, I could have a job posted for a week and have 700 to 1,000 resumes. Depending on location, I would say. Yeah, it's a lot. It's there's a lot of people looking for change, I would say, regardless of their situation, whether they've been laid off or unemployed or just want something new. There are a lot of people that apply often.
So within a stack of 700, how are you kind of sifting through what stands out to you most? What are the resumes or candidates that are getting your attention?
I think, well, the first thing, in order to be recognized, you have to apply first, in my opinion.
Okay.
Within a reasonable.
You're just saying apply in general.
Well, so I think it's really important to understand the recruiting role and how we're measured in our success in order to know how to apply to jobs, because part of the recruiter role is how fast are you finding people for me? So if you see a role that's been posted for a month, it's more than likely that there are many people already going through the process on that. And you have to treat your job search as a full-time job and apply first, so that, because if I post a job today, tomorrow I'm looking at who applied and I'm sending the ones that are qualified to the team, because it's a time game. The longer I take to fill the role, the longer that work's not getting done. Yep. So I think you have to be one of the first people to apply. And you have to be qualified. That's a big one. And you have to understand who's looking at your resume first. Okay. And it's me. Yep.
It's you. All right.
It's me, who admittedly, humbly, is not an expert in the field often, or I know a lot, but I'm not an engineer. I'll be the first to admit that. And so you have to tell your story and write your resume for me, not for yourself, in my opinion.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Even maybe some humility in yourself when you're writing your resume. And I'll give you a good example is if I post a position for a senior software engineer and I get a resume and it says, I'm the founder of this organization and I created this product and I lead teams all day. And we're developing the next generation of this specific technology. I'm going to go, that's not really a match. Even though you might have the skills.
Okay.
Alternatively, telling your story correctly would be saying, I'm a software engineer for this company. I write this code in this language specifically. Now, you might also be the founder. Yep. It could be a small company, whatever. But at least I'm not looking at it from a recruiting perspective and saying, this is a CFO. This is a chief technology officer. Okay. This person's not an engineer. And it's really understanding the requirements for the position, the qualifications for the position, and telling your story to match that.
Yes. Yeah. And that, if I'm processing and if I'm kind of following you, it's like, okay, you list the role. As a candidate, don't assume that the recruiter knows and understands what that role means and what you did within it. Okay.
Explain it to me.
You got to decode it. Okay.
You don't have to.
Right.
I would recommend it.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. Good call out. Yeah, exactly. Okay. No, that's super helpful. And I think the point that you made around being the first to apply is huge, because I've even 100%. Been that in the time of my career where I'll see a job posting, I'll save it, and I won't apply. I'll just kind of let it linger there.
Or you'll think, oh, do I qualify? Should I apply? Should I? No. Make sure you meet a lot of the qualifications. Yeah. Apply. And it might take you an hour or two, but it's time well spent, because you'll be the first one in the bucket when I look at it tomorrow morning. Okay. Now, what is your kind of preference on folks reaching out? If the company is nice enough to list who the hiring recruiter is, I just am curious, are you getting, with all those 700 applications, 700 notes from people? Yes.
Okay.
So there are a lot of AI tools that do it automatically now. And I get probably 10 a day in my work email inbox. Okay. And I get another 20 a day on LinkedIn. Okay. All with similar messaging from the same AI tool.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So it's very difficult for one person to respond to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it's impossible to respond to everything. So I think there's time better spent tailoring resumes for individual job postings than trying to reach out to recruiters and make a connection like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I will also preface by saying it's industry specific.
Yep.
I'm in tech, Bay Area tech. Like, it's a big industry and there's a lot of people that want to break into it. If your qualifications and your skill set, if the industry you're in is like smaller niche organizations, that I think is where the networking and the messaging might be more helpful. When you're a bigger fish in a smaller pond.
Yep. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Just based on your experience so far over the last decade recruiting across multiple industries, I mean, what would be 3 tips that you would give to new grads, folks looking for employment, 3 tips that you feel like would really help set them up for success?
I'm going to go back to humility again.
Okay.
Humbleness is really important, I think. And from the perspective of you have to start somewhere. Know your worth and know your value, but also understand the value in meaningful professional experiences from a ground level. And if you want to break into an industry, you may have to take a role that wasn't what you originally thought it was going to be in order to build those experiences to get to the next one. I think that you need to leverage your human relationship building in this world of AI.
Yeah.
You need to be able to work with humans and show that not only can you do the computer tasks, everything's on computers these days, pretty much, not nursing, but everything else.
Yeah.
You need to be able to show that you're competent in face-to-face interaction. And I think building those skills, but also understanding the value and just showing up every day and building relationships with people while you're doing your work is also important. And the third one I would say is, maybe endurance isn't the right word, but you gotta keep going. Like apply, and treat it like a full-time job. Because it is. Yeah. Until you have a full-time job. But I also think it's like trusting the process, because just like I was explaining, like I didn't think I was going to be a recruiter, but I don't think anybody thinks that they're going to be a recruiter. And you have to land somewhere, and figure out what you like and what you don't like, and then move on to the next thing.
I love the endurance piece, especially now where I feel like the job market is really tough. It's super tough. I talk to people or see online people are applying to hundreds of jobs, not getting any kind of return. What kind of feedback or like positivity would you share to folks that are like doing the things that you said, right? They're applying, they're trying their best to stay optimistic, they're trusting the process, but they're maybe just a little discouraged.
My first question would be, so you mentioned like I'm applying to hundreds of jobs and I'm not seeing anything in return. And my first question to that is like, have you changed something about what you're doing?
Yeah.
Because it's not working.
Hello. Let's change it. I love that.
Yeah. Like, have you thought about how you're doing it or what my resume says? Like, it's the narrative is not being told in a way that's being looked at by these organizations that you're applying to, and you need to change that. You need to change how you're telling your story to hopefully get in front of them, or have some humility and apply to a position that's a little lower in scope in order to get your foot in the door. But the big one is telling your story on your 1-page piece of paper.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to that. So 1 page.
I'm not actually, you can tell if within reason. Okay. If you're a new grad, I don't think you need more than a page, because there's really not much going on there, right? But if you're a professional in your career and you have many experiences, use as much as you want. Now, remember, I'm looking at your resume. I have a coffee in my left hand. I have Teams popping up in the right screen. Maybe you get 60 seconds of my eyes on the paper. So I'm not looking at 5 pages.
Yeah.
So make sure the real estate is being used Effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Make sure my eye goes to what you want me to see to tell your story.
Okay.
I'm maybe a little non-traditional in that sense,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm like, get rid of the skills section.
Okay.
Get rid of the job profile. Don't tell me that you're a passionate this, that, the other who does this. I want to see what's your work experience and what are you doing there?
Mm-hmm.
Because anyone can use ChatGPT and put the skills matching my job description.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, everybody does that.
Mm-hmm.
That's already the baseline.
Yep.
So use the real estate to tell your story better.
Okay. So give me a way. What is a great way to tell a story? Because you're honing in on that. Give me a great story and give me a womp story. Like
I have a lot more womp stories than great, I think.
Okay.
But
let's learn from the womps.
I think one of the biggest things is those who apply to jobs without adjusting their resume. So, for example, if I have a software engineer role that requires strong proficiency in coding in C++, which is one of the languages that software engineers use. If I look at your resume and it's not mentioned that there's C++, that's already, I mean, that's a big part of the job. So, so incorporate that into somewhere. If you're a new grad and you don't have professional experience in C++, make sure the first thing that I see on your resume is that here are the projects I did in this class where I use C++ to do it.
Yep.
Now, new graduates and people that are early in their career have many times roles specifically dedicated to their type of experiences that they can learn in role, and you need to be looking for those as well.
Okay.
Professional people, let's make sure that you're spending time looking at the job description and making sure that there's tangible bullet points under your work experiences that show me that you actually are doing what you say you're doing. And I'll give you an example, which is when you put your resume into ChatGPT and you say, make this match my job description, ChatGPT has not had your personal experiences at work. It only can match generally by pulling the bullet point and putting it in your resume and rewording it. I want to know what project you were on, what was the product that you were working on. I want to know how many people were on the team and what your direct contribution to it was.
Yep.
Because if I see a resume that says I collaborated with this team developing this product and then I reviewed it with everybody, it looks like you were maybe tangentially working on this and you weren't actually directly involved. Instead of I coded it this way and I used this tool and I used this language and it turned into this product. I'm going to say, okay, Channelle knows what she's doing and she's done it before.
Yes. Yes.
It's important that I know you've done it before if it's a professional role.
And can we dive into that a bit? Yeah. Because I do think that is, and you said this a little bit, a mindset shift about, and this specific one is about really taking humble ownership, but ownership of what you have contributed in.
100%.
Because I feel like sometimes, for folks that we work on teams and we collaborate and it was a group effort.
Yes.
And yes, but what did you do?
100%.
Okay.
Because we've all worked on teams where there's one person or there's maybe a couple people not doing as much as other people, or their roles are more oversight anyway.
Yeah.
Supervisory roles, or they're more I would call them quality roles, where they're really making sure that the work is getting done from a standard of quality, but they're not doing the work.
Yep.
And you want to make sure that if you're applying to a role where that it requires you doing the work, you're explaining that you've done it versus I let everybody else do it and I was sitting on the team.
And I think with the best of intention, that is sometimes how your resume can read.
Yes.
If you aren't specific with outlining your contributions.
I think you can show in an interview that you're a great team player and not have to put that on your resume as much.
Yeah.
Make sure you own your own work. And then in the interview, when I talk to you, I'm going to say, oh, this person's great. I want to work with them. They're a great team player. And they're an expert.
Oh my gosh. Beyond resumes, what makes someone memorable in an interview, or I'll say an initial screen call, or even in kind of a first glance of a resume?
So I think recently we've been, I've seen a shift. I'm going to speak for myself, right? There's all sorts of industries and recruiters doing different tactics to do it. There has been a push recently, I think, to, or maybe in past years, to remove the barriers to application for candidates, where LinkedIn one-click apply. We want to make sure that it's so easy for you to apply to the job that really all I have is a resume. And I think we're shifting into a world now where I'm asking very specific questions on application, looking for very specific answers to make sure that I'm weeding out those using AI to apply and actually getting professionals doing it. The reason why I bring that up is because you need to spend time on questions that are asked in the application to tell your story, so that when I read it, I know that's what makes you stand out, is you took time to give me this big answer to my question. And the example is on a lot of the applications that we have now, we say, tell us about your experiences writing production level code with this language. And the reason why we're asking is because sometimes your resume doesn't tell the full story, and this is your time to put yourself apart from the pack. And we review all of it. There are AI tools in the industry that people use to kind of do some general screening, but for the most part, the recruiters are still looking at resumes and applications, and that's how you stand out, is by putting time and intentionality into your application. And then when you get in the call, you have to be personable. It's personality. It's oftentimes I hate to use the word soft skills because sometimes that's not fun, but I want to say, like, I want to make sure that, like, if I'm interviewing you, like, I want to work with you. You could be an expert, but if you're not fun to talk to, or you're not fun to sit across from, it's most likely not going to go in your favor. And that's the part that can't be on the resume and the application, is the skills of, like, showing that you're a good team player, showing that you want to you can sit across from the interviewer and build a product together, or work on the team that's trying to get to the next level.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but even in that space of you assessing within that screen, you're kind of doing it from multiple lenses. One, you as an individual, but then also you're serving as a conduit to that hiring manager
and the organization as a whole. And the recruiters are putting their professional reputation out there by saying, this person's great, you need to interview them. And that's why, so we have to play a dual role where we are representing the organization and the hiring manager, but we're also representing the candidate. And we're trying to make sure it's a good match. And I think it's a good recruiter explains that from the beginning, where, I tell people all the time, I play matchmaker, and I'm not just trying to fill the role. I'm trying to make sure it's the right role for you. And I'm trying to make sure it's the right fit for the team.
Based on the skills and things that you've identified and the team has identified.
Based on that, but also based on, like, we want to make sure this person stays at the company. We want to make sure you're enjoying, as you're enjoying the role. You're seeing value outside of actual physical compensation. We want to make sure that you feel rewarded in the work that you're doing with the team that you're working on. Otherwise, you're going to leave and have to fill the job again.
And that's such a big cost to the organization.
Because then, it takes a good 6 months to a year to just even ramp up. To get good, meaningful work getting done.
Want to take a moment to thank and acknowledge our partners, specifically the associated students and the usage of the Backdoor Studio. This is an amazing facility that is free and open to all students, where you get amazing access to this studio, equipment to tell your story and create content. So make sure that you use it, and thank you, associated students. Thank you to the Backdoor Studio. So you talked a little bit about, leveraging AI for resumes and maybe an application to the job. I'm curious if you have any thoughts or tips on how to leverage or partner with AI for prepping for an interview.
I think it's really important that you say prep for the interview.
Okay.
Don't use it during the interview.
Okay.
There is a lot of opportunity to feel very confident with having AI backing you. And I think it's important that you authentically show yourself in the interview and maybe get the question a little bit wrong, but I know that it's you answering the question. And it's not you reading off of the screen. There's so many tools out there that are being marketed to job seekers saying that it's better to use this AI tool that listens to me say the question and it gives you a script to read back to me. And it's textbook a correct answer, but it's inauthentic because I can tell you're reading, and it is, and I might not even be looking for the textbook answer. I want to know if you can work on the team with me and if I want to sit across from you and work on that. And if you are reading from a script, I might as well hire ChatGPT because it's ChatGPT thinking it for us. So my recommendation is to use it and then critically think if the information that it's giving you is what you want to use in the interview. Because it can also be very wrong often, which I think we forget. And use it, and I think gone are also the days where there's this formal interview back and forth. It's not really a formal conversation anymore. I'm not sure when the last time you had an interview was, but the AI will spit out a very formal answer and expect a formal response, and it's just very obvious. So I would use it to build your resume, use it to reword things with more detail. Don't use it during the interview.
No, that's really good information. I think too, and I want to dive into just a little about like notes, because I've been in interviews where I'm part of a panel. And I think it's a both and I think this is separate from AI, but just in general, there are going to be people, and I'm not this person, like they will script out their answers in prep and they are reading notes live. And I think there's a way to, my preference is to acknowledge to the people, hey, I have notes that I've prepared that I'll glance at periodically to check, to answer my responses. But what gives me the ick is when someone is verbatim reading a script and you're not connecting with the people in the room. It just, and I think genuine. There's a way to kind of demonstrate that you've prepared and that this is important to you and you've kind of have notes that you're going to reference. But in the human conversation, it's important to be
how
human.
to get ahead of that? It's okay to admit you're really nervous.
Exactly.
That's the authentic piece to it, and saying, hey, I have notes and I am very prepared because I really want this job. I get really nervous. Especially if you've never done an in-person interview before. There's many people who maybe started their career during COVID who it's all been on Zoom. All of the classes are on Zoom. You graduated college, you've been in Zoom rooms this whole time, and then you have never done an in-person interview. It can be very scary, but it's okay to admit that you're nervous, because then I won't question the reading. I'll be like, okay, I appreciate you admitting that you're nervous. No pressure. Everything's okay. You're the expert. I'm just listening to you.
That part. Yeah. And and to that point, I feel like people, if you are nervous, or even if you're not nervous, I find it helpful, do some mock interviews. Because sometimes you think what you're saying sounds good, but you need to be told in a safe space that it doesn't sound good.
That probably happens often. We'll see after I rewatch this podcast what I sound like.
You sound awesome. But I just think that practice and prep is so important.
And use ChatGPT to do the practice.
That part.
It can talk back to you, and it most likely, I've never tried that, but I'm thinking it could probably do really good.
Yeah, totally.
And then the more you rehearse, you have to remember that you're the expert. And that, well, hopefully you're the expert. You have to remember that you are competent and have that confidence to come in and know. And if they throw a question out of left field that you're not prepared for, stop for a second and say, that's a great question. Let me think of my answer, because I want to make sure I present it to you in the way that I want it presented. And I wasn't expecting that question.
Yeah. Because I would much rather you take that moment and that pause, gather your thoughts.
Yes. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Versus just responding and you just have said something that none of us understand.
Yeah. It's a bunch of corporate jargon.
Exactly.
And then I go, did they answer the question?
No, they didn't. And
Maybe.
then we move on.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. So good. You've talked a little bit in a few times about intentionality and storytelling while, the way I kind of interpret it is figuring out the right balance of leveraging AI and then at the same time making sure that you maintain a level of authenticity. So I'm curious, do you have any tips, whether that you use or that you've seen candidates do well where, leverage the tool, but how do you not lose your voice and your identity and your unique value prop within that process?
I think one of the important things to know is that when you use ChatGPT or Claude or any of these AI tools, it may look like unique information to you, but it's giving everybody the same information for the most part. And when one person, me as a recruiter, is reviewing that information, I can see the patterns of it's the same thing over and over and over and over again. And one of the ways to make sure that you're not losing your authenticity in it is using it as a tool to help, but also putting your own spin on it. And I keep going back to tangible, real world information. That's not corporate jargon. It's not ChatGPT business lingo. It's actual things that I know that you actually did versus this vague, ambiguous statement where I read the resume and I go, okay, I just spent a minute reading this resume and I'm still not sure what's going on. It looks like a match. All the words are there, but I don't know if this person is doing what I need them to do still. Because it looks great. Yeah. It reads like a wonderful LinkedIn post that someone spent a lot of time on. But there's no meat to it when someone else is doing the meat. I think that's a big thing. Okay. It can look great and you can submit it and be really proud of your application, but someone else has probably got a much shorter resume with very tangible things that's easier for me to read, and I can tell that they're more qualified. Wow. It's all about having them being the most qualified sometimes. Yeah. And the way that you present that information. Yes. Yeah. And I appreciate you saying, remember that this may look good to you, but ultimately the outcome you're looking for is I gotta look good to me. Exactly. And that you hope that you pass it on to the hiring manager and to the team. So you talked a little bit about the importance still of human interactions, human connections. We've talked a little bit about different platforms, whether it's LinkedIn, staffing agencies. What do you have thoughts on the future of networking and job hunting, finding? I think LinkedIn is on its way out personally. Okay. I think it's a lot of AI slop. I think it's turned into a social media site. I think we also have to remember that, or I guess people don't know this, but using LinkedIn is very expensive for organizations to use. It's so expensive. Really? To have recruiter seats and post jobs and all that kind of stuff. And organizations will always find ways to do it themselves. I think, and I think we're in an era where LinkedIn might not necessarily be as fruitful as other means of recruitment marketing can be. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I don't even really get that many emails or in-mails anymore for people reaching out about job opportunities. I get in-mails all day about people looking for jobs. Yeah. But no one's really recruiting on LinkedIn as much anymore, in my opinion. So maybe spending your time elsewhere that can be more fruitful. I think going back to the what you were saying earlier, where if you're doing the same thing over and over again and not getting any results, we gotta switch it up. We gotta switch it up. And if LinkedIn's not working for you, I'm not surprised, but we gotta go somewhere else. Where would they go? Directly to the company's website. Okay. In my opinion. It's posted there first. Yeah. Sometimes it'll get scraped to LinkedIn 24 hours later. that 24 hours could be crucial in being the first person seen.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe use chat. This is a perfect way to use ChatGPT. Find a list of companies that you can continuously be looking at their careers website for,
Mm-hmm.
and have ChatGPT curate the list, send you the link, make an Excel document, and treat it like a full-time job. I keep going back to that.
Mm-hmm.
Refresh the careers page every couple days or every 24 hours, depending on how much time you have,
Mm-hmm.
and apply directly on their website.
That's a great hack.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
It could be the difference between being 24 hours behind.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
LinkedIn it's not an automatic thing. It scrapes every night at like midnight.
Mm-hmm. And I just appreciate you saying, hey, don't let it be your only lever.
No.
Right. Just like with different, like it's best to have a lot of different ways to get your resume in front of the people that need to see it. So why wouldn't you have that same mindset with your resumes and putting them in different outlets to get the greatest kind of impact?
And have a different resume for every job.
Yeah.
You have to.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to tell the story for that job and for that organization.
Mm-hmm.
It might take you a couple extra minutes, but it's worth it.
Okay.
It's not the answer everyone wants to hear because it's a lot of work.
It's real. I mean, and that's the whole point of this conversation, is to identify what are the tangible, real life things that folks need to do that maybe we don't always create the space to talk about.
Yeah.
But I think that was a reality for me, and it's still a reality for me. I have a different resume for different sectors, for different companies, even kind of the story that I want to tell behind the work that I'm doing.
And something else that's good to research is how applicant tracking systems work,
mm-hmm.
and how they match candidate resumes to the job posting.
Yeah.
And what filters recruiters use to look through applications and resumes and stuff. Because I'll give you an example. If your title is member of technical staff and the job posting is for a software engineer, those terms are synonymous. It might not be your exact title at your company, but the system is going to show me software engineer profiles before member of technical staff, because it's a match based on the English alphabet,
mm-hmm.
and less about the actual experiences. It can't tell. It doesn't know tangible work experiences. It knows this keyword matches this keyword.
Mm-hmm.
Make your resume match exactly,
mm-hmm.
and it'll show it to me first.
Mm-hmm. And it's a very delicate nuance, right? Because you are saying, to some degree, leverage the information to match appropriately,
mm-hmm.
and do it in a way that is authentic and tells your story.
Yeah.
Right.
If you're sitting in a program manager role,
mm-hmm.
but you're operating in a different fashion, doing the work of a UX designer. I don't know if that's going to happen, but if you're doing the work of a UX designer, put that you're a UX designer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not a lie.
Right.
And there is a difference between in HR, or like in organizational kind of structure. There are two different terms. There's a business card title and a system title.
Yes.
Everyone's system title is just unique to the organization, and the business card title is whatever you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Put it.
And I appreciate, because what is the best way to universally kind of name and describe the work that will enable door opening versus closing them?
And describe it to me.
Yes. Okay.
Not to you.
You talked a moment ago about what makes a candidate memorable. I'm wondering, is there anything else that really kind of resonates with you when you think about that?
I think communication after the interviews does make somebody memorable. Whether that's the thank you note afterwards. We're not seeing that as often anymore, I think. It's not going to land you the job, but it will make you memorable.
Yeah.
And I think that sending a quick note to show that you're still actively engaged in the interview process can be important, because there are so many people that interview and wait and wait and wait. And I know that it can probably be nerve-wracking to figure out, should I follow up? Should I not follow up? What's the protocol? What's being too pushy? What's not? But being actively engaged in the interview process as a candidate shows interest in the organization and not just trying to land a job can probably be very memorable.
Yeah. We have to practice gratitude.
Yes.
Yeah.
And genuine, authentic interest in the experiences of the interviewers and wanting to work with them can make the biggest difference. It's the difference between having someone sit in front of you and want a job to pay their bills and want a job because they want to be on the team.
Yeah. And even, post interview communication, I even think like the questions, when you get your opportunity to ask questions to the recruiter, to the hiring panel, the hiring manager, I feel like you should take that opportunity and really have thoughtful questions.
I agree. And let's touch on thoughtful questions.
Agreed.
Because
Agreed. Yeah, let's break it down. Because
I know that traditionally in maybe interview classes, or if you're learning how to interview, how do you like working for this company?
Yeah, no. Ew. Yeah. Ew.
I'll answer the question for you, but it is everyone else might be asking that question. I get many interviews where they don't have any questions at the end of it, which can be fine if I'm doing my job correctly. Hopefully I've answered all your questions before you have to ask them. Now, when you're sitting in front of the actual hiring team, that can be a different story.
Yeah.
Because you want to show that you're actively processing the information that they're giving you and then taking it to the next step. But also, maybe this might be a non-traditional opinion, but I think that your interview should be a two-way street and not a one-way street. And you should be interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you.
Yeah.
Because this is your life and your job.
Agreed.
And you need to make sure that this is the place you want to go.
Yes.
It's not, and if you don't want to work for the people that you're sitting in front of, make sure you figure that out from the beginning before you're already in role and you're 6 months in, because you didn't ask those questions during the interview process.
What are some myths? Like if you could debunk 3 myths that you feel like people may have operated under a year ago, 5 years ago about landing a job, like what is just not true today from your perspective?
The first thing that comes to mind, though, is career tenure. Do you stay for 10 years? Does that look better?
Okay.
Or do you stay for 1 year and jump? I think there's a delicate balance of, it is no secret that the external market moves faster than internal markets to the organization. And it's no secret that you can win more rewards by putting yourself out there and jumping around from organization. But I think the myth of staying at a company for 10 years, I think that those days are over. But you have to be able to stay long enough to build a meaningful professional experience.
Yeah.
For example, if you jump every year, even every 2 years, and then I see that you built the next generation of insulin products that saves people from diabetes, I'm going to go, don't think that happened in 12 months. I think you were still learning how to use the HR system after 12 months. Maybe after 3 years, you did some very good contributions to that work. But if I read your resume and it looks like you're running the company after 12 months, I don't think that's true. Yeah.
Okay. That's a good one.
You know what I mean?
For a tenure. Yeah. Especially with so many different life circumstances, I feel like, with people kind of entering the workforce, leaving and coming back in. But I really like your point of like, however long you stay, make sure it's enough to have meaningful impact and contributions.
Truly. Yeah. And not just putting it on your resume.
Hello. Yeah. What's another myth?
Oh my goodness. I think there's a lot of bad PR that recruitment or job applications are getting right now. Just, you mentioned it earlier, how you hear all the time of people applying into the abyss. I don't think that's necessarily as true as people love to tell that story when they're not seeing results. I think that you have to be more targeted in what you're willing to accept for yourself, but also be honest with where you're at in your career and what you can land and what you can't land. There is a myth maybe, or that we hear often, where it's like, apply to the job and you never know what's going to happen. And then if you apply to the job and you don't get it, and I see on the internet that you're upset that you applied to the job and you're applying to all these jobs that, like, if I applied to be Taylor Swift,
Mm-hmm.
I can't be Taylor Swift. I opened for Macklemore 10 years ago.
Yeah. I
might be able to get a job at a
Ryan.
coffee shop doing acoustic guitar.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's real.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it circles back to me from what you said earlier, which is if you're not getting the outcome you want, you've got to do some introspection to really identify what's not working.
And identify the steps in between what you want and where you're at and how to get there. And it might not be the jobs you're applying for. It might be somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Oh, such good information. Okay, we're going to move to rapid fire.
Okay.
And I just want thank you for all of the insights today.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's just really, really, really good information for folks to have access to. And so I just appreciate that. So rapid fire, these are meant to be quick, fun questions.
Yes.
They can range from professional questions to questions about San Diego State.
Okay.
And it's just whatever first comes to mind.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
We're going to find out.
Okay. If you could relive one SDSU moment, what would it be?
Oh, we talked about it already.
Really?
Macklemore.
Okay.
How do you top that?
Yeah, that's a good one.
You know?
Yeah. What's another
standing in Greek Week, maybe.
Okay.
There's a lot of camaraderie during Greek Week that, you know, I mean, actually you're on the same, I was on the same stage for Greek Week that I was for Macklemore. And, you know, there's a lot of lead up to that.
One word that makes you skip a resume instantly.
It can't be one word.
Okay.
I promise I look at more than one word on the resume.
A sentence. Or maybe one ick that you're like, oh no.
It's gotta be when I look at the resume and I don't see anything that's relevant to the job.
Okay.
Yeah. There's not a word. I would say that.
Okay.
I think that people overthink resumes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not science.
Mm-hmm.
It's real estate to tell your story.
Yep. Okay. First word that comes to mind when you hear SDSU.
Burrito.
Oh, okay.
Trios.
Does Mike don't have a
lunchtime.
burrito at Trios?
We did.
Okay.
Back in the day.
Oh, nice.
I mean, I think a lot of things, we said things change daily here.
Yeah, they do. But I just was there telling on myself.
Okay.
And all the burritos were still up there.
On the wall?
Awesome. Yeah.
With the same placards, or did they at least change them out?
No, like some of them are the same.
Are they faded?
Yeah, I think they've like redone them. They were pretty vibrant.
Okay.
Yeah, they're keeping those fresh.
Yeah.
Personal brand, necessary or exhausting?
Both.
Yeah.
Absolutely necessary, but very exhausting.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Finish this sentence. Once an Aztec.
Always an Aztec.
Hey-o! Ryan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Channelle.
Awesome. I want to thank Aztec Shops Bookstore. They are an invaluable partner that help provide all of the SDSU swag and gear. So please make sure that you stop by the bookstore or visit shopaztecs.com to get all of the latest, greatest swag for any of your SDSU events.